Welcome to the Cabin Culture Podcast, where we spend a little more time diving deeper into all the fun parts of cabin culture. We like to think of this as both the material and imagined expressions of how cabin lovers, dwellers, builders, and designers wish to live a more simple and authentic life. We're back this week on the podcast with part 2 of our interview with Candice. And I first of all want to apologize for the quality of this audio intro, but I wanted the podcast to get out on time and I didn't remember to bring my microphone home, so this is recorded on the good old iPhone. If you listened to last week's episode, then you know exactly where we left off. We're picking up part 2 with Candice, the host of Boho Aframe out on the West Coast. If you didn't listen to part 1, it's not necessary for part 2, but it definitely lays some foundational groundwork as to who Candice is, what her space is like, and just a lot of the details that will help you understand her point of view. We're back today talking more about hosting, and weirdly, when editing, I noticed that this half tends to be a lot of host horror stories. Not all of it, we're going to get to the good stuff later, but we do start this episode by sharing some of our personal hosting horror stories. As always, thanks for joining us. Let's do it.
Okay.
Done.
Okay, that took a while. I was like sitting here like, when am I going to pop up? I think I'm open.
No, it's because I was typing an email and didn't add you to the stage.
I thought it was me. When it's technology, I always think it's me, but
No, this is like so funny. Both of our podcasts have been, I'm just dealing with all kinds of Airbnb issues this morning. So my husband's texting me to like find out when the guests are checking out. It was just like,
it's so relatable though, right? It's a very
I know.
it depicts the realities of hosting and how you just can't unplug it.
Do you do all your own cleaning?
No, I started off doing all my cleaning and then I had a lot of trouble with cleaners and I ended up with the cleaners I have now, and I've been with them for probably like 2 years and they're amazing. If you guys are listening,
Yeah.
I love you all. But
Yeah.
so they like I was ready to quit hosting, honestly. I was like, I can't do this, I'm done. And then
Because you were doing the cleaning.
because I was having so much trouble with my cleaners and finding good cleaners. Like you wouldn't it's honestly kind of shocking how many cleaners aren't good at cleaning. And so, yeah, and it's like you need that fine balance. You need them to be like communicative, you need them to be good at cleaning, you know? And so it like there's and you need them to have the availability, right? It's hard to find people who have that
Yes.
11 to 3 availability like continuously. And I'm just so
Right.
blessed with my current cleaners. I love them so much. So, but it took a really long time to find them. It was really hard.
How did you find them?
I honestly think my cleaner, he had just started his company, so he didn't have a short-term rental yet, and he had a there was like a Yelp page, I think, is how I came across it, and I was just messaging out as many people as I could, like trying to find the right
Yep.
fit. And I'm like, I could have had like so many different cleaners, but I'm so particular because again, I'm I think like you, the guest experience is really important to me. It's not just a business I'm like ramming through, you know? And he worked out amazing, and then he brought on one of his cleaners that he has now, so the 2 of them clean the space together, and they're awesome. So I
Yeah. Yeah.
the core of
This
your
is so
business right there.
This is so funny because I just got off a cabin consultation and that was one of the questions. She's like, how did you find your cleaners, whatever? And weirdly, where I found every single one of my current cleaners is on Craigslist.
Yeah,
And I think the trick is writing a good posting.
yeah,
It isn't just because I'll get tons of responses to each of them, but I'm very specific. The hosting stuff is first. Like I need someone with an attention to detail and a heart for hosting
yeah,
who cares about guest experience, who not only wants to clean, but like wants to make sure that it's in good shape for guests.
yeah,
And when I started putting all those details, not just cleaner needed for Airbnb,
yeah,
must have 11 to 3 availability, I started getting, none of my cleaners are professional cleaners.
yeah.
They're all individuals with other jobs that are flexible who want to fill in the gaps, an artist, like whatever.
Those can be your kind sometimes. I've
Oh my
found with
gosh.
big companies, like, they don't have the attention to detail, like, they just send someone different each time, and,
Yep.
like, it's, like, difficult and hard for, like, restock and, like, curating a particular experience, and, yeah, I'm next door and I can, like, check behind them, and I check
Right.
through and take photos and stuff after the whole dog piss experience to have, like, this is how they get inherited the space,
Yeah.
like, not everyone has that luxury, and it's hard to find a balance between, like, a cleaner that, like, just cleans and a cleaner that like can let you know and like help you with a little of the like minute
Yes.
things. Like it's a fine balance, the expectation there too, you know.
Oh my gosh, it's so hard, but that's where I found the clearer I wrote. And because I wrote so much and I put pictures of the space, the responses I would get either are, I'm interested, call me, or I'd get a long email that was like, hey, I loved your posting. I'm interested in hosting on Airbnb. I don't, I haven't
Yeah,
done it before. Like,
that's
and
cool.
you can just tell from their response
Yeah.
who's gonna be like a good fit.
Yeah.
I will say one time I arrived in Boone or in Freeport and it was, like, late at night, it was cold out, we just wanted to start a fire, and I was like, "Sean, you work on the fire, I'll unpack the car," and he looked in the wood stove, and, like, Tammy had set up, like, everything you need to start a
Mhm.
fire, 2 pieces of wood and a fat wood, and all he had to do was light it, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Holy
Girl,
shit." It's like, "This is
get your
next
cash
level cleaning."
bonus.
Your Christmas gift is gonna be nice this year. That's the details that, like, a cleaning company is never gonna think about that, but
I think sometimes hosts too, they don't like respect and appreciate their cleaners as much as they should too, you know? So like it's a two-way street. So it's like if you show them how much you value them, like they'll help in return, you know? So
yeah.
I always try and show my cleaners how much I appreciate them because they're like
Yes.
they're such an important element of my business. And they're like people I care about too, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
yeah.
Tammy is like my closest friend in Freeport. When we go up
Exactly.
there, the first person I text is her, and I'm like, "When are we gonna hang out? What are we gonna do?" You know? And I love that. And then my cleaner at the lake, who I just hired because I was not pleased with our other one. Oh, I have a question about the other one. But first, after like a couple times, she texted me like something that the guests had done, not bad.
Yeah.
She's just like, "It's weird. I'm feeling like oddly protective of this space already." And I was, that's exactly the right people will feel that way
Yeah.
about the space.
Yep.
Okay, so before her, I had a cleaning company,
Yeah.
and the cleaner left out a tip envelope
Oh,
in the property and never asked us, never told us.
yeah.
Whenever my sister and I would show up, I don't know if I wanna say this on the podcast, we would, like, throw it out because we did not want guests to feel like they're already paying a cleaning fee, which is controversial enough, and then to feel like they have to tip someone on top of what they're already paying for.
Mhm.
But is that, like, a regional or cultural thing? Or does that feel how does that feel to you?
My initial thought was cringe. Um,
Yeah.
but, like, I want my cleaners to be able to, like, collect tips. Occasionally, someone will leave, like, a little cash for my cleaners, but I wouldn't say it's norm. I feel like that is, like, a standard practice in the hotel industry, you know?
Right.
So maybe that was, like, kinda transferring into short-term renting. Like, I for me, I kinda take it upon myself to give my cleaners, like, a tip and an additional, like, thank you. Like, I occasionally leave them, like, an envelope with, you know, a cash and whatever, and like other gifts, but
Mm,
just kind of like a expression of appreciation because I don't like doing it to the guests because I feel like it makes them feel pressured to do something and it's not like creating this relaxing space for them on top of the culture right now surrounding like fees. I
right.
feel like everyone's like heated online about fees. So I
Oh,
feel like having like a cash envelope or like a tip envelope out would just piss them off. And then you have to
I agree.
end. Yeah.
And they're not disconnecting you from your cleaner.
Yeah.
It's all
No,
one
yeah,
experience to them.
100%. I feel like they'll think you're trying to cash grab more from them and be irritated with you as a host, but I love it that concept for my cleaner. I love the,
I
like,
know.
idea that my cleaner could have that, but I'll just take it upon myself to, like, tell my cleaner
Right,
thank you instead of put it on the guest because I don't wanna deal with the guest irritation surrounding
right.
that. But
I remember during COVID when cleanliness was, like, so important to getting bookings, after, like and I noticed that our old cleaner was getting a bunch of I think it was after, like, every 3 reviews that specifically mentioned cleaning in them, not necessarily gave her a 5 on cleaning, because that's, like, kind of expected if you do a good job, but, like, specifically said, like, "I was impressed by the cleanliness." I would send her, an extra Venmo, that's how I paid her. I would just send her a Venmo for no cleaning to just be like, "Hey, we got 3 reviews that mention cleanliness.
yeah,
That's amazing to helping us book more. We're making more money because of that. Here's more money for you." And then, of course, Christmas, there's always gifts
yeah,
and bonuses. But I felt like there's a name for that. It's not a spontaneous bonus. I'll think about it.
yeah,
Someone introduced it to me for work. They were like, so I did the same thing anytime a client after a shoot specifically shouts out like one of our freelance shooters, I would send them a little bit extra like,
yeah,
"Oh, you created a really good experience for our client, which is benefiting the business.
yeah.
Here's a little bit extra." I was like, "How can I apply that to my Airbnb?"
Gotcha. Yeah, I feel like I don't do it like per review or per stay because in general, my expectation is that it is clean, you know?
Yeah.
And I kinda don't give, like, reviews as much weight as I used to. I'm like, people are annoying and they'll say stupid things. Like, the few times I've gotten marked down for cleanliness, it was like, "We saw a bug," or "There was a
Yeah.
cobweb under the cover of the, blinds." Like, you have to look up in there to see it. I'm like, "What the heck?" Like, no one looks up. How did you even see that? Like,
Right.
but so I feel like the few times that my cleaners have gotten dinged for cleanliness, it was so ridiculous. I was just like, whatever, man. And I check behind them, like, just to have a second set of eyes. So I like don't want, and I don't want to make them feel pressured by like guest review, you know? Like I already have to deal with that pressure. They're good at their jobs. I trust them. Like I'm just gonna
Yeah.
give them bonuses every here and there. So but I do think that that could be powerful for like a cleaner that's maybe missing things here and there, you know?
Yeah, this is all really good to think about. Do you ever share feedback just on that note of like trusting them? I struggle with this a lot.
Mhm.
When guests give feedback on cleanliness, I struggle with filtering that
Mhm.
slash I don't want to upset them. I think they're doing a great job. I don't want to make them feel bad.
Yeah,
And also, if there's an area for improvement, I want to be able to give that feedback, but
right.
how to do that in a way that truly feels like, hey, I'm not upset at you at all. I know how guest reviews are. I just want to pass along the feedback. Do you pass it along? How do you do this?
It depends. If it's stupid feedback from a guest, I don't. But if it's like something worthwhile, I'll pass it on to the cleaner. But like my cleaner and I, we have like a banter. So we're both like, can you believe this shit? You know? So like she's really nice and he, both of them, at like not be taking things personal where one of the big issues with my cleaners before is like everything was personal and like it just was
Mm,
drama. So I feel like if the personalities they have in my cleaners, it's really easy for us to talk about it. And most of the time we're just rolling our eyes and being like, oh, that's ridiculous. Cause we know that they did fine. And I saw that they did fine, you know?
well, and
So
you're checking it afterwards. Oh, I'm so jealous. That would be so nice to just have,
yeah.
like, eyes on it
Yeah.
afterwards and just be like,
Yeah.
"Great, it
And
looks
it's like
good."
occasionally something gets missed, like, you know, "Oh, whoops, forgot to take the trash can out," or something like that, and I'll just be like, "Hey, just FYI." But honestly, I don't usually, like, tell my cleaner something unless I've seen it happen a few times. So, like, yeah, because if it happens.
'Cause we're humans.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I tell my cleaners all the time. I was like, "You're human. I don't expect perfection. At some point, you're gonna miss something, and it's not a big deal." Because again, we're
Yeah,
human, and give people some grace there, right? Like, if you're
right.
nitpicky with like every little thing, and I'm super type A, and I'm aware of that, so I'm like cautious to like, I'm like, just save that for later if it comes up again. So like,
Yeah,
for example, like my cleaner, she would take like the soap and like the soap holder and like the towels and set them up on a shelf in the bathroom and then she'd clean the counter. And I think after like she left it like 3 or 4 times on the shelf and didn't put it back on the vanity. Not a big deal. My guests can just grab it off of there, but usually put it
right.
next to the sink. So after the third or fourth time, I was like, hey, just FYI, this has been left up here a few times. She's like, really? No. Like she didn't, you know. So it's like, but it wasn't a big deal, you know? So I just like, I don't know. I give him grace most of the time and I just don't feel like I spent a lot of time and energy finding good cleaners that I wouldn't have to like keep in check or whatever, you know? So
Yeah,
it's like I have faith in them. I'm just like I let them be free. So
yeah. The worst cleaning story I have, my former cleaner who I mentioned,
yeah.
her boyfriend was there helping her. I think they were assembling furniture. They were doing something. I paid him extra to assemble. We had like gotten a replacement bed or
Mhm.
something. And so he had like cut open the box. And the next guest checks in with her children and says, hey, I don't even know what to say about this, but we found a knife in the bedroom and it's stuck into the trim in the bedroom. Like, I just can't even
The
make sense
trim?
of what it
What
is.
do you mean trim?
Like, the trim on the bottom, you know how there's, like, the wall and then there's trim? It
It's
was,
the
like,
maple.
stuck right in between the 2 of them.
Mhm.
So I, like, reached out to my cleaner and I was like, "Hey, like, do you have any idea?" Because I was mostly worried, like, did someone break into the house with a knife? Like, what is going on?
There's
And it turns out when he was assembling the stuff, apparently that's where he stores the knife so that nobody steps on it. It's
yeah,
just like his own quirk that he would do,
yeah.
but then forgot that it was there.
No
So a guest checked in and found a knife in
nightmare.
their bedroom.
I
And I'm just like, you're checking into a cabin in the woods. Like,
yeah.
this is like could be very
If you have
creepy.
kids or do they have kids? You said they had kids, right? Oh god.
Yes.
Nightmare. I've seen so
Having
many
the answer, she was cool about it. When I could explain it to her, she's like, "Okay, phew. I just needed to like understand what was
she's like,
going on."
"Why do you guys store knives in your basement?"
Baseboard, yes. Like, why?
Oh man, that's funny. Yeah, I've heard horror stories like up to of like guests like calling hosts and being like, "Hey, I left a gun." like, they checked out and they, like, left their pistol or something, and I'm like, "Oh my."
Because they probably hid it. They probably, like, put it away somewhere
Yeah.
safe.
Oy, oy, oy. And, like, as
Okay.
opposed, like, if I was just, like, went in there and someone's gun was chilling there, I would be like, "Okay, I hope this is legal gun." Like,
I don't wanna know anything about this. I wouldn't even wanna touch it. Guns make me so uncomfortable.
yeah.
Okay, one more horror story.
Yeah.
Over Thanksgiving 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, the family left a day early. So the cleaner came in and said, "This is really weird. It's like a ghost town. It's like the entire family just picked up and left out of nowhere, but there are, like, dishes out. The fridge is fully stocked. There's, like, stuff on the counters." Could not make sense of it. So, like, so she's like, "Okay." And at that time, I was like, "Well, the food can get thrown out unless you want any of it." And she took a bunch of it because it
Yeah.
was all Thanksgiving, like, leftover food.
Yeah.
And 3 days later, and we had guests checking in the next day, and
Yeah.
then 3 days later, the guests who checked out said, "Hey, just want to apologize for leaving so hurriedly." It turns out our whole family came down with norovirus. Do you know anything about norovirus?
Yeah, like, mostly tied to cruises and stuff. We would get, like, little I worked in the emergency medical field, so we would get, like, little notifications about it and stuff. I,
Okay.
like, never
Okay.
really had to deal with a patient who had it, like, immediately, but yeah.
Well, this is during COVID, and I was like, "Okay, everyone's talking about COVID, but no one is talking about norovirus,
Yes.
which apparently causes you to vomit and diarrhea, like, incessantly and is
And she
highly
took the
contagious."
food. No.
Mhm. And to clean for norovirus, so obviously she cleaned the house, but
Yeah,
cleaning for norovirus, as I learned from this trip, is a totally different beast.
yeah,
You have to clean everything that people touch, and it has to be cleaned with bleach
yeah,
or it will be contagious.
yeah.
So then I didn't know this until 3 days after. So then the next family who checked in all got norovirus
No.
from that. And so then we immediately drove up to do a deep clean with bleach and
Yeah.
everything. And we wore masks and gloves and, like, but it is a whole operation. And if those guests don't tell you, and that's the thing. So I guess the takeaway from this is if you ever have norovirus and are staying
Tell
at someone's
somebody.
place, please let them know.
Yeah,
Cause it's like otherwise there's no, it wasn't negligence. We
yeah,
had it clean. We just
yeah.
had no idea what had happened
And it's
there
like you're
because
not
we
gonna
weren't there.
bleach everything, like, you use different cleaning products, so it's like the to think you would actually bleach everything from top to bottom, like, just in a standard clean, like, isn't really typical, but we obviously use, like, sanitizing things on, like,
Right.
common touch areas, but in, like,
'Cause this was during COVID, so she was doing all the
yeah,
advanced cleaning protocols.
boy.
But even then, it's like if you're spraying, like, doorknobs and whatever, there could be just one area in the
Yeah, I
house,
mean, the
and if one person gets it,
yeah,
then everybody
the
gets it.
construct that we can control viruses is definitely out of control.
Yeah.
Like, you can only
Yeah.
do so much at some point, you know? Like, it'd be cool if we could just, have some sort of microbiome ability
No,
to, like, see every pathogen, but we don't, so
we do not.
and the thing is too, like, I feel like the big takeaway from that is guest communication is so nice to host. I feel like a lot of the time guests, like, don't wanna tell when, like, something gets broken or, like, when something comes up, and I love it when guests tell me, like,
Me
I'm
too.
like, "Thank you so much for telling me. Don't worry about it. We'll get it covered. I appreciate the heads up." Like, that's
Yes.
way more my mentality than, like, "Oh my god, blah, 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 blah." Like, we've had guests, like, grind sausages down the garbage disposal, which we really ask people not to do, and, like, they're like, "No sausages down the drain, guys," but, just, like, we ask them not
What
to
a
do
specific
you
request.
know, we ask people not to, like, put food down the drain, like, "Just use a trash bin, please." Like, we have a
Yeah.
compost bin now and, like, a drain cover because when people see a garbage disposal, they're like, "Yeah, we just put everything in there," and I'm like,
Everything.
it's not how it's supposed to work, y'all. But so they like just totally destroyed our plumbing and they let me know and I was able to like be more prepared to handle that situation then because they were like about to check out. I think they did it the morning of checkout. So I was like, all right, I'm gonna be a plumber today. but yeah, everyone on social media thought that story was really funny. But
I so agree. Knowing is better than not. Like, text me. It's fine. You think that you're bothering me, but actually, like, if I'm worried about, like, what's going on, I feel way better if you
yeah,
just tell me about that stuff. It does
100%.
not bother
Yeah,
me.
we're not gonna be mad if you tell us. Thank you. We appreciate
No,
that.
no,
Transparency is great.
for sure. Okay, I'm going back to our list because we
Okay.
only made it halfway through last
Yeah.
time. I think we ended on direct booking.
Yeah.
Did we get through everything
I
on
don't
direct
think
booking?
so, but I was just pitching you. I was trying to get you to come to the direct booking side.
I know. I've been thinking about it ever since. I've been
You're
thinking about
a
it. And
candidate for it. You really are.
I
Honestly,
know.
borderline, I think the biggest reason I'm a big fan of direct booking is I don't have as much faith in Airbnb, VRBO, like big companies as people do. I think it's a false sense of security at the end of the day. So
I know. I think you're right. I've experienced that before, and I'm probably just one really bad interaction with one of those platforms
I was gonna say
away
that.
from that happening.
Mhm.
And I did have something bad happen with VRBO once where the guest showed up to the house and decided not to stay
Yeah.
because they thought they were predicting snow and they thought the
Mhm.
road was going to be too steep. And
Yeah.
they're like, no, we're not going to stay. They did not cancel their reservation.
Mhm.
Wasn't going to give them a refund. It's the day
Yeah.
of. We tell you about
You
all of
already
this ahead
booked
of
that.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they went through their credit card company and filed a chargeback. And the first one got denied, and you can file 3 chargebacks. So then they did it again and got denied. And then the third time, I don't know if they were just sick of dealing with them, but the third time they gave them a chargeback. And each time you file a chargeback, they take the money back out of your account until it's been settled. So then they put it back in, then they took it out, put it back in, and then eventually took it out and we never got it back.
Yeah.
And VRBO never talked to me about
I
any
don't
of
feel
it.
like
It
they
was
have the
just,
best customer service, like, contacting someone there. Like, Airbnb, you can contact someone, but I would say, like, 90% of the time, the customer service I get from them is shit. Sorry.
yeah.
And the other 10% of the time, you actually get someone who's excellent. But the amount of times I've been, like, showing Airbnb and messaging them and reading them their policy that I pulled up online that I'm trying to follow or that they need to comply with, and they're just like totally dragging their feet and making it difficult for me is like absurd. So
So
I
maybe I need to hear this because I've had all good experiences with them. So my perspective, it's nice, but I'm not protecting myself probably enough because I trust them right now.
yeah, I don't, unfortunately.
And
Yeah.
so maybe that's where I
Yeah.
need to be doing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they just like
Red,
outsource their customer service too much, maybe. I don't know. I
do you call the superhost number? Because they do have a superhost number.
yeah, I do.
Damn.
Yeah.
I've always had such good luck with that.
I've had great people like, when you get someone who's good, they're great, but there's
Yes.
so many times, like, the communication's so hard, you're just being pushed around and bounced around and, "Oh, we'll call you back. Oh, we'll get back to you." They don't get back to you, you need this issue resolved, you're asking them questions, they won't give you a straight answer on, like, their protocol for it, and it's, like, so cryptic and what I've, like, even been talking to someone on the phone, he's like, "Let me look," and he's, like, reading something, he's like, "Oh, I wasn't supposed to say that part out loud, don't tell him," because they have, like, a whole like dialogue they're supposed to follow that they're reading to you. And it's so irritating. I just wish their customer service
Ugh.
was better because I do really like Airbnb. I have my or quarrels, whatever dislikes for it. Anyways, but I really do like it. It's a powerful marketing platform. But there's some if they could just improve that, then it would be. But yeah,
Which is kind of ironic, right? Because as hosts, what we know to be true
yeah,
is that things can go wrong during a stay,
yeah,
but good customer service can fix almost anything.
yeah. That's why we're
If
here.
you're just quick on it, yep. If you know something went wrong and you offer the money before they have to ask for it, if you're really responsive, if you're trying everything to
Yeah.
fix it, like that makes all the difference.
Mhm.
And yet, to then you would think that that would be a number one priority for them because it's so aligned with what we're doing as we serve their customers,
It's so
basically.
hypocritical, right? But yeah, I don't know.
So interesting. Okay, but on that note, one of the things you mentioned that I'd love to ask you about are how do you screen for red flags ahead of time to prevent bad things from happening?
With like, direct bookings or
Oh, no, 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 just with guests.
oh,
So I'm just going back to we're going to move on from direct booking. Just
perfect. Love it.
in general, screening, what are some of your red flags for screening guests?
It's kinda like individual. I've noticed a lot of people think that a guest not having a booking before is a red flag, which I actually thoroughly disagree with. I find that my first time booking guests are honestly great most of the time. They're new to Airbnb. You get to, like, give them their first experience. They're usually more
Yeah.
considerate of your space. This is like they understand that they're genuinely, like, renting your home, where, like, seasons like, Airbnb guests can be, like, more hypercritical, more, like, entitled,
Hmm.
more, like, they just have high expectations sometimes.
Yeah.
And and I have no problem with high expectations, but they have expectations that are better suited for like a full-time concierge hotel, you know?
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that I don't care about that a lot of people care about as a red flag, as far as like if they've had like stays or not. Cause honestly, I've top 5 guests, a lot of them have had a ton of five-star reviews, like, of my top 5 worst guests. So, I don't
Mm,
give it a lot of weight. I really am just like, "Whatever." If I see, like, a bad review, obviously, like, there was someone who tried to book my space. It was, like, last minute, which I don't love the last minute ones. They tend to be more problem. but they had a review that was like talking about like piss in the spa and like leaving the place trash. So I called Airbnb and I was like, hey, no, thank you. And they helped me.
Had they already booked, like instant booked?
Yeah, I have instant book, but their policy surrounding instant book is like you can cancel, I think it's like 3 bookings that you feel uncomfortable with. And
Okay.
I think it's within a year's timeline, which I've only had to
Okay.
do that once because I read a review and felt uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
And they've changed that. That did not used to be the case. I had to cancel an instant book once just because it was super last minute and the date wasn't available because I think my dad was in
They're
town.
not very
A
forgiving when that's the case.
Yeah, I lost, Superhost status for, like, a year. This is when it was just within my house, right? So it
Yeah.
was, like, trickier.
Yeah.
And so they've fixed that a little bit where
Yeah.
that one and understandably, like, I should have blocked it off. We just
Yeah.
never got last minute
Yeah.
ones, but it screwed me over for a year.
Yeah. So, yeah. Other things too are like just the way they communicate. If they I have a this is a good tip, hosts. Good tip. Okay. Pre-booking message. I have noticed there's certain things that a lot of people wouldn't do or wouldn't read or wouldn't notice. And I've put them in a pre-booking message. And in my pre-booking message, I say, reply yes that you've read this. So I see who has actually read these details and knows that like these things are the case. So like for example, like people would like assume our location is different than it is. So I have like a short little blurb about that. Or like I have a lot of people were just booking with one guest and not putting their pet in and not putting the second guest. And so we like prep the space a bit differently with like amenities and stuff for like pets. And we have like a pet basket and a kennel for them and like a bed and doggy treats and things like that. So we put that out for them and we have like a blanket that goes on the couch to like help hopefully preserve the.
Okay, what a good way to incentivize them to disclose that they have pets. Your pet fee is not just in case of damage, it's also for all these added
Yeah,
amenities that
well,
we're
that's
putting
part
for
of
you.
I have, like, a 300 something dollar kennel, like, and it, like, collapses and it's, like, super bougie and stuff, so it's like, yeah, I wouldn't just, like, charge my fat pet fee. I know it's fat, I know, guys, for with, like, no amenities, like, yeah, you get the same thing as everybody else. No, so we have, like, other stuff for the pet stays too. There's, like, a lead outside for the dog to be on because it's, like, a big yard and whatever else. We have, like, poop bags to help them take care of the poop and
Yeah.
bowls and doggy shampoo. I had a thing of like peanut butter with one of those like bowls they could like the trick thing that
The lick mat.
yeah, but we took that out because a little disobedient doggo.
Ate it all?
Yeah, he chewed through this was yeah, one of the top 5 worst guests I've had, and the dog got left unattended, and it chewed through this jar of peanut butter, and it was all over the rug, and like it was bad. But yeah, so we don't do that treat anymore. But yeah, so we do stuff like that. But anyways, that's a side note. But yeah, so a common conundrum hosts express is that like people don't put the pet in their booking, right? And so in my pre-booking message, I say like, hey, make sure you include your pet because I don't want people to be like surprised by a fee later and be like, what? That's not what I expect. I want them to see the full price breakdown and be able to decide if like that suits their needs and their budget,
Yeah.
whatever else. And I know I'm not going to be the right fit for everybody, and that's okay. But I want it to be like fully disclosed and not like, surprise, you showed up with a dog and you didn't put you had a dog, and now I have to charge you this fat pet fee that you weren't expecting. So yeah, there's like, and I didn't prep the space for your pet,
Right.
so
Right.
so yeah, so that's one of the things I include in there.
Wait, quick question. When you say pre-booking message,
Mhm,
but you have instant book turned on,
yeah.
so when do they get that message?
Yeah, so, it's if you go, like, pretend to book a place, I think you could probably see it before you actually had to pay, but it pops up on Airbnb. So, like, I actually got this idea from being a guest myself because they had a pre-booking message that, like, acknowledged some things and was like, "Hey, please, like, please reply yes." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is so smart." I learned it as a guest, to be honest with you. And so
So it's just through Airbnb.
yes,
They'll get it before they can actually
yeah.
confirm their
I think if
booking.
you go to I think it's under booking settings and guest requirements, and there's a pre-booking message spot, and you can put a little message in there. So mine says like basically like you agree to pay for any damages you do. You put the right amount of guests and pets, and you understand something else. I forget. So it just acknowledged things that were like reoccurring issues that I was like tired of like repeating to guests
Yeah.
essentially. So that has helped with the and I got on this like tangent because a red flag for me was people who would like book with one guest and then message me about who they were coming with and their dog and stuff. And I'm like, you like, it's so simple when you go to book to see that you put two guests and a pet. Like it's bulletproof, I would think, but so many people don't put it. And so that's a red flag to me because it shows me you didn't read my listing and you're likely going to show up with expectations of things that don't exist here or aren't like don't
Mm,
equate to my listing, and you're going to be unhappy with your stay because of that. So I
right.
put that like second check in there for the pre-booking, like, hey, have you read and agreed to my house rules? Do you understand my property kind of thing? Because a lot of people would just, I think they look at pictures, don't put their guest count in, don't, and they just book, and then they show up and they're like not happy about something. And I'm like, dude, it's right there in my listing. Like I put my listing is so thorough because I just want everyone to have like an accurate understanding of what we offer. And so when I see that they haven't really probably read my listing, it's like oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Red flag.
they tend to show up and do things they aren't supposed to or be unhappy with what I provide because they didn't read my listing and they can't really do much about that. So
I just put that on my to-do list to create pre-booking messages, but I do think I
yeah.
might put something in there that's like funny or like positive because I do hate, I like want guests to read my listing. I want them to do everything. I don't want them to feel like I'm like their mom or
I
dad
know.
who's like, have you read
Yeah.
this? Like,
Yeah.
but it is important. Your point is so true. You get sick of saying the same things
Yeah.
over and over again.
Yeah.
How do you encourage people to read them in a way that feels supportive?
Yeah.
Like, we just want you to have a good stay.
Yeah.
And we know there are certain elements of our stay that may or may not be a good fit for
Yeah.
you.
100%.
I will say I've never had a pre-booking message, but at my first cabin, it sleeps 8 to 10 and it's in a college town. It's outside of a college town.
Two
And
hard ones, high guest count and college town, which we're like, I guess we're kind of technically a college town, like Cal Poly's here, and like we
uh-huh.
get a lot of business because of like people knowing our area because of Cal Poly, but I wouldn't say I'm like a college stay. But yeah.
Well, App State is definitely a college. Boone is the home of App State, and our next door neighbors. It was a neighborhood of 18 homes, and 15 of them are rented. But our next door neighbors happen to be full time residents. Now, granted, we're in the mountains; you could barely see their house when the leaves are out,
Yeah.
but you can hear like we're over a valley, so you can hear things, and we'd get lots of complaints. So I created this and this time I didn't have instant book on. And if I was suspicious, I sent this message that was just like, "Hey, we would love to have you. I
Yeah.
just want to give you a heads up. Our
Yeah.
neighbors are full-time residents.
Yeah.
They have been known to call the cops on rowdy groups who
Quiet.
are loud." And I said, "I would hate for anything to interfere with your stay. We
Yeah.
want you to have a great time. If
Yeah.
you're like looking for a quiet weekend in the mountains, you will love it here.
Nice.
If you have a louder group or a rowdier group, we totally want you to have a good time. We just might not be the best fit for you."
Yeah. That's very much verbiage I tend to use too. Like, if this is the case, this is what we offer, this might suit you kind of thing. But I also
And we care about your guest experience. Like,
yeah,
we care. It's not about like, "Oh, we don't want you to bother our neighbors." It's
yeah,
about like, we want your experience to be good. And I found that either they wouldn't reply and would never book, or they would reply quickly and be like, "Oh my gosh, we're definitely not looking to party, but it sounds like this might not be the best fit."
yeah,
AKA, we're looking to party, but like we've self-selected out, which is great.
yeah.
And then the third one was like, "Oh my gosh, we're coming with our grandparents and our 1-year-old. Like, we're gonna be in bed at 9 PM.
My
This sounds
grandpa
amazing."
I mean, what? That's what's gonna
And that alone, we had 0 issues after we started
That's
using that.
nice. Yeah, it's more intensive to, like, have to manually do that and, like, decide who deserves that message or not, but it's a good way to weed them out. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I would say my listing errs on the side of more momming and more stern than I want it to in an effort to deter those types, but then when you actually get to communicating with me, it's a very different vibe, and, like,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's like yeah, I make exceptions to stuff a lot of the time. I'm more lenient when especially when people are like, "Hey, whoops, like I didn't see this." Like what I'm like, "No big deal." Or like, so it's like
Yeah.
I'm stern up front in order to shield myself from a pain in the booty later, and then like I'm actually pretty mellow.
Yeah. This is where I feel like the sternness and labels start out very chill because you're like, "I just want everyone to have a good experience." And then over time, the more bad experiences you have, the more jaded you
Yeah,
become, the more stern you become.
yeah.
Or the more questions you get, the more labels you input. And I
Absolutely.
totally understand the value in both of those things. But I do think it's a constant balance to
Yeah,
not lose that idealism of the early years where you're like, "I want everyone to have a great stay,"
yeah,
in favor of being jaded. So I think that's constant work I'm doing is
yeah,
like, I do want to protect myself and I want the right fit. And I still want you to know that I am really excited to host you.
yeah.
And that there is joy in this too, not
Yeah.
just like, this is my house that I'm letting you stay at. It's such a
Yeah.
tough balance.
Yeah, you have to like not I like to say you have to decide like to not don't reactive hosting isn't the best way. So it's like if every bad experience you have, like you can't go in your listing and change something for every bad experience because it's probably one sour apple, you know. But like if you have a reoccurring bad experience with like a certain thing, then you might need to adjust your listing appropriately for that. So like the pet thing we talked about last time, it's like it wasn't the one dog that pissed all over everything that made me react and decide to increase my pet fee. It was an accumulation of experiences, and that was like the cherry on top where I'm like, I just need to raise my prices or not do this. And I still want to offer this for people who want it, but it's going to be more expensive for those that want it because that's like what suits my business and
Yep.
like doing the math and seeing how much I'm spending to like make this happen for people. And I'm like, okay, well, I just have to raise the price. And if that works for people, great. And if it doesn't, oh well, you know, but it's still an
Yeah.
option for those that can pay. And quite frankly, getting a dog sitter is pretty expensive anyway. So
I was literally on my last cabin consultation. She's actually a former guest of mine. She stayed with us multiple times with 3 dogs and 2 dogs, and that's exactly what she said. She
yeah,
said, "We don't mind paying a hefty
yeah,
dog fee because we always do the economic math of how much is it gonna cost us to board them
yeah,
versus bring them with us. We always want to bring them with us, so why not?
yeah,
Like, we're happy to pay more," which was a good reinforcement of what we had talked about last week.
yeah, yep. So
Don't be afraid to charge the pet fee if you need to, but I love what you're saying about reactive hosting is
yeah,
not the best way and
mhm,
checking yourself. Something that someone said to me about, working in groups and neighborhoods, it came up in one of my HOA meetings, and it
mhm.
was
Oh God. Sorry.
no, it was
I'm like,
great.
no HOA, but we're
I know. This was my primary home, but, the way it's a mindset shift, and she said, "Instead of thinking about what we want,
yeah,
what if we thought about what we can tolerate?" And
yeah.
it changes
Mm,
everything. Like, in a neighborhood setting, that's easy, right? Because it's like, "Okay, so you're playing your guitar loudly and I can hear it, but it's 7 o'clock at night. I think I can tolerate that. Okay,
mhm,
but now you're doing it at 11. That maybe I can't tolerate," right?
yeah,
Like, do I want you to do it at 7:45? No,
yeah,
but can I tolerate it? Yes. At
yeah,
11 PM, maybe I can't, right? And it's just that reframe in my brain. And I think when it comes to hosting, that question is really important because if you
right,
can't tolerate it, your own tolerance for like wanting to host is going to go away. So you
yeah,
have to figure out what those boundaries are
yeah,
that keep the joy for you to be
right,
hosting.
yeah,
And then in your case, I don't want to deal with like a lot of pet damage and that's what I've seen.
yeah,
So I'm going to put a boundary in place where it's like if they do damage, they've paid a hefty dog fee and I can then tolerate it
yeah, exactly.
considering that that's in
That's
place.
so accurate, that's what makes it tolerable for me, and it also helps me
Yes.
just, like, I can just cover the expenses, and I don't have to, like, ask the guest, and it does like and I can provide
Yes.
amenities, I can, like, restock towels that have been damaged, and even though we give them doggy towels, but, like, you know, so it's like it made it tolerable for me, which is why we do it for sure, but yeah, that's a good point. I think I probably, at this point, err on the side of a bit jaded with hosting, which I try not to be, but admittedly, I'm just kind of burnt on people's needs sometimes, but
Well, you've been doing it for what, 5 or 6 years?
since 2019.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, 4 years.
Yeah.
I do think after the first year or 2,
Yeah.
that is not uncommon. Like,
Yeah.
I definitely I can have that tendency, but I've worked really hard to, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
to just be careful of when it's showing up
Yeah,
because
for
if
sure.
I lose yeah, if I lose the joy, like, I don't wanna do it either, and
Yeah.
I still find after 9 years immense joy in hosting, and I
Yeah.
think
I do
some
too.
of that
For sure. Yeah.
yeah. But I also think that that boundary that you put in place, though, with the pet fee is such a good example because not only can you now tolerate it, but I actually think that having that whole doggy basket and, like, the nice kennel probably brings you joy too. When you have guests who are thrilled by that because you've gone above and beyond,
Yeah.
that is one of the thing that feeds your soul as a host, right? So, like, that actually allows you to do that. It just seems really smart.
Yeah, I think yeah, I agree. It's just it's a balancing game, and I think it's good for me to, like, remember the guest experiences I've had and, like, the joy that I had through short-term
Mm,
renting and to, like, like, yeah. I think honestly what makes me jaded is, like, the lack of kindness from people. It's not so much that they messed up my house or that, like, they left me a three-star review with nothing going wrong in their stay and messaging me, "It was great." But like, you know, it's like it's not that. It's just like I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. People are people, but it's the lack of like kindness or respect and like because I would never do that to someone else's house. You know?
yeah.
So to me, it's like I it's kind of which every personality is different, everyone's different, but I'm someone where it's like, if you let me borrow a car, I'm gonna bring it back cleaner than I got it full of gas with, like, maybe a snack in the water holder, like, something like
Yes. Yes.
it's my, like, I guess that's my love language, I don't know. But it's my
Yeah.
way of saying, "Hey, thanks," so to me, it's like, and I think I also had really good experiences as a guest. Well, I've had bad too,
Yeah.
um, but I had really good experiences, especially internationally, because it's very much like way more hospitable than the US. Like they're very kind. They're like, welcome into my home. Like that there's just a mentality of kindness and that kind
Yeah.
of hosting. And so to think that people just like come and go and like trample over things and are just like whatever and like don't respect like what people have established for their property is like kind of hard for me just out of like the construct that like we would treat other people that way. But I don't think it feels like personal to them. I think it's just like whatever, I just booked this, it's a space. Like they're not thinking about people. And I'm like a huge empath at heart. So
Yeah. So that's hard.
yeah.
You don't understand it. You can't relate to those people. So
No,
then
I
it's like, I
really
can't
don't.
even begin to understand why you would
Exactly.
do this.
Yeah, but not now that I think about it, I'm like at the end of the day, they're not probably empath personalities. Like I just
Yeah. They're not even thinking they did anything
no,
wrong.
they don't even think about the other person, which is that's a personal thing. I don't understand how people do that.
Yeah.
I'm always thinking about how I impact other people. Yeah,
Which probably is one of the things that makes you a great host.
probably, yeah.
Why do you think it's so different here in the US than it is internationally? What is it about our culture that creates that?
Yeah, so, I think internationally, maybe there's an appreciation for the business we bring them more than there is here to some degree. Our money is significant in a lot of the places I've traveled, so it's like, people are like they just think you're rich, which in their world, you are rich. So I think that you bring, like, a very powerful ability for them to thrive in their country when you book their place that doesn't come otherwise. And because of that, they're very hospitable and kind and like, welcome to and I also think it's just culture. Like the US culture, I don't think is as neighborly as it could be. And I've
Yeah.
found, and I probably tend to like to travel places that are more neighborly. Like I like Central America. I like the Caribbean. I like little Queen Island shack vibe things. Like that's like
Yeah.
I thrive there. And so I love like a lot of the culture would be like Central America, and I feel like their culture
Yeah.
is very family welcoming, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would say like when I was in like Portugal or Europe, like they meet you at the door and they let you in. I think it's required there to have short-term rentals.
Yeah.
From what I was told, I think by a host, I remember them being like, "Oh yeah, we have to." I was like, "Oh, I didn't know that." They weren't as like familial as the
Well, it feels different if you have to do it
yeah, right.
versus you're choosing to
More
do that.
obligatory, yeah. So yeah, I think it's mostly culture. I think it's also maybe like we're so used to this here and
Yeah.
like we've grown uncomfortable with like community and transparency and like direct communication. And so we have this like phone. I shouldn't, not everyone's watching this. I put my phone in front of my face when I said this, y'all. So it's like we're so used to hiding behind technology and like not actually communicating with people and seeing people as people, and they're just kind of like an inconvenience or something that is
Yeah.
like a means to an end, instead of like really acknowledging their existence. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think maybe
Yeah.
it's just culture, I think mostly. So yeah.
So interesting to think about that. Okay, what about insurance?
Yeah.
Things that people should be thinking about. I'm jumping back to the list of we're still only like I have
Yeah.
like 4 more left for you and we only have 10 minutes left.
Okay.
Like,
I'll try and
what?
focus
How did
trying
this
to keep
happen?
on here. Sorry.
No, it's not your
I
fault.
mean,
I
I
just don't know
should
how
have
this has happened twice. Insurance. What should people be thinking about that they might not be thinking about in terms of insurance?
Yeah, make sure that this is a great question. Make sure that your insurance covers the ways you book because some insurances will only cover you if you book on Airbnb, some won't cover you if you do direct booking. So I had to change my insurance to be able to do direct booking and book the ways I do. I would get your own liability. I think so much of like people's sense of security with Airbnb is that oh, they provide 1 million in liability and 1 million in I don't know what they call it, property or something, whatever
Yeah.
the term is in insurance. And so I think that it's important to seek like being independently insured for that because again, I don't have that false sense of security with Airbnb personally.
Agreed.
And
Because
so
you're gonna have to jump through hoops to get them to pay on that, and they're gonna fight it
yeah, they
from what I've heard.
yes. And I mean, I think that's kind of just the nature of insurance. It's a freaking
Yeah, agreed.
scam. But yeah, so just make sure that it covers for short-term renting for one, because regular old homeowners won't cover for short-term renting, which
Yep.
I didn't realize when I first started hosting. I'm like, wait, I just thought you insured your house. I didn't know. But you're technically running a business out of your house. So like
Yep.
you got to have that. And then just make sure you have liability that will cover you in the variety of circumstances that can occur with a short-term rental.
Like loss of use. That's the big one that I always say
Yeah.
is like, if anything happens where then you have to cancel a bunch of
Yeah.
reservations, if you have loss of use and then they'll look back at your year's prior records of
Yeah.
how much you would have made during
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
time. And they will not only pay for the damages, but also for the lost
Yeah.
revenue.
Yep.
And I think that's a really big deal if something
Yeah.
happens and you have to go through repairs.
Yeah, yeah. For us, that wasn't like it's individual, right? But for us, that wasn't as big of a deal. I have some loss of use, but for me, first off, for Handy, we've renovated the space once, so I'm like, we can fix it again. But
Yeah.
so, I don't want to, but I can. And then,
Yeah. You know that you
yeah,
can, which is
and then so
nice.
I'm like, I'll get it done quicker, even but also it's like I don't have to have that income. It would be tight without it. But so that wasn't as big of a thing for me. It was more like liability security and
Yeah.
yeah, and making sure that I would be insured, like should a guest catch the house on fire, which would be really ironic that I'm married to a fireman, but I'm sure he wouldn't be home when the house is on fire. I'd be out there with a freaking garden hose, like, where's my husband?
Oh my
But
gosh.
but like, should a guest catch it on fire, I want to make sure I'm insured and that the insurance would cover that occurring. So yeah.
Yeah. And just FYI, like the liability for me, it costs like nothing to
It's
add it
not
on
that
to
much to
my
have
policy.
yeah, I know.
It is so little compared to what I pay in insurance. Oh, and if you have a wood stove, make sure you're disclosing all of that.
Yes.
Again, we just added one in our primary home and it added $0 to the cost. That hasn't been the case with our short-term rentals. It did up it a little bit,
Yeah.
but that is our highest risk. And if you
Yeah.
don't have that included and disclosed, if that
Yeah.
causes a fire, you will not be covered. You will
Yeah.
immediately be excluded from
Also,
any
make sure
coverage.
before I forget, make sure you apply it. Like, think about your amenities. So, like, we had bikes. We don't provide them anymore because they barely got used. But bikes, spa, like, are those covered if a guest takes the bike off site and gets hurt? Like, because like, what if they're like, oh, the chain on the bike was bad. It's the host's fault or something like that. So, like,
Yeah.
think about your amenities you're providing too. Like, we don't do fire. We converted to a gas stove because EPA in California and all these things. But
Yeah.
um, and I was knew that the intent was for short-term renting, and I was like, I ain't brave enough to do wood burning with guests. So
Yeah.
we have gas. But yeah, and another thing that I learned when I was researching insurance was leaving alcohol for your guests. A lot of hosts will leave a bottle of wine, and if say that most insurances say you that guest drinks that bottle of wine, gets a little woo, goes up your ladder and falls, and they sue you and blame it on the alcohol you provided, you're not covered with most insurance policies because you need something entirely different for the liquor.
Okay, that is very good to know.
Yes. So
Darn it.
know that.
Okay, we've been lucky so
Yeah.
far. We put champagne out for holidays, and I literally never thought of that.
Yeah, I started putting out like Martinelli's essentially because it and also you don't know if they drink or not and
I
whatever.
know. I've wondered about that, so
Most
it
people
can't hurt.
do and they don't care and they like
But
it,
it could
but
be
yeah.
a box of chocolates. I'm thinking what I like about champagne is that it stays good. So when I'm in town,
Yeah,
I'll go and buy 20 bottles and just put
true.
them in storage where it's like food. But I can come up with something else for that. That's a
Yeah.
really good idea. Okay, or not idea, but good to
Yeah,
know.
yeah, totally.
Did not know
Yeah.
that. Okay.
That's also part of, like, why you have to write listings the way you have to write them and say some of the things you have to do. It's like liability and insurance, man. Like, we live in
Yeah,
the
it couldn't
United
hurt.
States lawsuits, man, so you got
That's right.
yeah.
It couldn't hurt to hire a lawyer one time to review all of your listing, all of your emails. I might actually do this with my lawyer and just have them give it a once over. You might pay for a couple hours of work or
Yeah,
whatever, and it might be, but to cover you for all of that stuff
yeah,
would be, and some of it I think could just be you change a couple words here and you're covered.
yeah,
So
yeah. It
that might
doesn't
not
say,
be a
like,
bad idea.
nothing's bulletproof, but you can try.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, last one I'm gonna cover because I just feel like you're gonna have a lot of good and we have a little more than 5 minutes if we need it, but people ask about this all the time, and you're great on Instagram, so I feel like you're gonna have a lot of thoughts on
Okay.
photographers and influencers.
Yes.
How do you approach this strategically, so in terms of making your own plan,
Yeah.
and how do you approach this reactively, as in when people pitch you? Talk to us about both.
Okay, yeah. So, honestly, I value working with photographers a lot more than influencers. I have done a lot of trial and error with it. I kind of was just like, "Well, see how it goes," you know? Like,
Yeah.
and I've definitely learned that there's significantly more influencers that hold like no value than there are ones that hold value. And so I think the things that I realized in working with influencers was like you have to make sure that they're first off a genuine influencer. So um the first influencer I worked with, she was like a travel influencer. She was based out of, I think, like LA or something. And I get a lot of guests from there. And she jumped up in followers, I think 100,000 followers, like a couple days before her stay was supposed to happen. And that's not really a thing. So I think she was purchasing her followers, which I did not recognize at the time, which was weird because she had a fair amount of engagement. But, anyways, so she showed up, shared stuff, and it wasn't valuable at all because her followers weren't genuine. And so I learned to, she was in my niche, right? So, like, one thing, make sure that they're already marketing what you sell. We'll start there. So,
Okay.
she was marketing what I sell. She was marketing vacations. She was marketing places to stay. That is powerful, right? Then make sure that their engagement and their following is genuine and ask where they're coming from because most of my guests come from California. They're not from Europe. I get a handful from, it seems like New York. I think they're tied to LA. That's why.
Yeah,
Um,
they're like coming to LA and then travel from there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I don't get a ton of people from the East Coast. So I'm looking for people mostly in California, mostly on the West Coast, because I know that that's where my guests are coming from. Like, don't try and go against the grain, right? So
Yeah.
now I've learned after you make sure they're a real influencer, then see if they have followings in the area that you get guests from. Because if so, they're marketing to the right people already for you, right?
How do you find these 2 things out? Because I think that's what someone who's not doing any of this would ask, and I'm not sure
Yeah.
I know the answer to it, is
Yeah.
like, how do I know if they're buying their followers or if their follower count is real? And how do I
Yeah.
know where their followers are from? I think I have an idea of that one, but how do
Yeah,
you do
so
that?
so I ask them where their followers are from, and they usually give me a percent. They can see it in their stats, and a lot of the time they'll send me a screenshot and show me. And then I like if I don't trust that they're telling the truth, like I just won't work with them anyway, too, honestly. So like, but most of the time they'll send me a screenshot. And then what was your other question? You asked how I know where they're
How do you
from.
know if their followers are real?
Oh, right. Yeah. So, engagement. So, if you see someone who
Okay.
has 100,000 followers and 200 likes, they're probably what maybe they did gain those followers genuinely, but they're not interacting with their stuff. So that it's, not very valuable. Like I have 6,000 something followers and I'm getting whatever engagement. That's more than someone with 100,000 I've seen a few
And
times.
you can ask them to share their engagement too. So maybe it's just asking them, can you share some of your numbers? I
Yeah.
like the idea of asking them to screenshot because a typical one is send me your media kit.
Yeah.
But a media kit, to be clear, because I have one, is like, I made it. I can update it whenever I want.
100%. Yeah.
And it is really tricky because one of the things on a media kit is engagement. But like, or I think one of them is like accounts engage. I'm trying to remember what it is, but it changes all the time. If I
Yeah.
have one reel go viral, then like one week I could be at 1.5 million people have interacted with my
That's
account.
a really
And
good
then
point.
yeah, and then literally a week later, and I didn't know this until I created my own media kit. And then a week later, I'm like, "Oh, well, now I'm down to like literally 170,000,"
Yeah.
which is like a huge swing just
Yeah.
based on how many reels you had go viral in that period of time. But like, am I going to go back and change my media kit from 1.5 million to like 200,000 when that happens? Probably not. And
Yeah.
1.5 million wasn't a lie. That's what happened that
Yeah.
week.
It's funny
And
you say
so
that because I talked to an influencer where that was very obvious because I looked at her reels. I was like, "How is her engagement so high?" And I was like, "Oh, she's had a few viral." So, yeah, it's not a black and white science, and so it's honestly, I would say it's a gamble most of the time. I've worked with one influencer that was powerful and helpful, and I don't know that she necessarily brought my bookings, but she brought traffic to my listing, and with that, I did better in the algorithm on Airbnb, which then in turn brought me bookings.
how could you tell that? How did you connect your increased Airbnb traffic to her stay?
Because I use Linktree, which tracks views. So when she shared her post, my views jumped on my Airbnb listing, and then I
Got
saw
it.
the influx of bookings as well.
Okay.
So yeah,
Great. I use Linktree too, and I rarely ever look at it.
yeah,
But good point. Even if you never look at it, when you have an influencer stay,
yeah,
that would be a good time to look at it to see
yeah. Yeah,
what it
I think I was,
does.
like, bringing myself around, like, 500 something views on my listing, and then it jumped to, like, 1,200 or something like that. So I knew
Yeah.
she brought me like a fair amount of views to my listing. So, and whether those, that's the thing, like whether those people are booking or not, they're looking at your Airbnb listing, which helps you in the Airbnb algorithm. So that was,
Yeah.
but yeah, so
And I think that's a good reminder though that while follows are nice, they're not like that conversion rate matters.
they're
And so
overrated.
yeah, I totally agree. And so I think looking at numbers besides just how many followers you got during their stay,
Yeah,
like if folks aren't following you because maybe they don't want cabin stuff on their feed, that's fine. But they are looking at your Airbnb listing. Ultimately, that's why you
that's what
want
matters.
followers. So pay
Yeah.
attention to that.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of like on my Instagram too, I have a lot of silent followers that like aren't necessarily like chatting with me and stuff. So like,
Me too.
yeah, which can be hard.
I
But
know.
yeah. So which that I think is why it's valuable to show up on your Instagram as a person that hosts a space, because who wants to talk to an A-frame? They want to talk to me. And
That's right.
when I get the most engagement online, it's me. Unfortunately, I wish it was the A-frame, but I'm like, I'm trying to get you all to like my space, but you like me more than my space. But
Yeah.
fair enough, fair enough. You like talking to people, I get it. But yeah, so I don't know.
You build a relationship with a human and not a little bit with a house, but it's just not the same, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. So
Although I will say the posts, I get the most engagement when I show up,
yep.
but I get the most shares, which technically counts as engagement,
Yeah.
when there's stuff of the house, because then people are sharing it to someone else. I'm
Yeah.
assuming either
That's
because they
big.
hopefully want to plan a trip,
Yeah.
although more often than not, I think it's because they're like, oh, we should do this thing. We should order this chair. We should
We
do this
should
tree.
build this.
We
Yeah.
should build this,
Yeah.
which is also fine. I'm putting it out there.
It's
People,
still
I can't
engagement, right?
control.
Yeah.
That's right. I can't control how they consume it. It is
Yeah.
what it is.
Yeah.
But of the house, more people are apt to share it, whereas of me, more people are apt to comment or
Yeah.
message, I think,
Yeah, I would
which
say
is
too,
okay.
like, it's important to have a clear outline of what exactly they're supposed to deliver. And honestly, I might err on the side of like having a deposit paid to you to begin, which a lot of influencers won't like. But I've had a few bail last minute because and it was unfortunate. So, yeah,
Never heard that before. So that's really good. Because if they don't put anything, like if there's no accountability for it, if they're not getting paid and it's just a trade, how do you make sure they don't cancel and you've blocked those days for
yeah,
them?
just write up a little contract that's like, you book it with your card, you get refunded when you show up, or give your deliverables, and you have these days, and should you try and cancel X, Y, and Z happens and whatever. Like, because I think I would do that now because I've just gotten burned a few times. So, and
Yeah.
the thing is too, you also have to do like the math on like what value it's bringing to you. Like, so for me, it's like I book at around 100% occupancy almost every month of the year. So on my own. So, and
Right.
I'm not any kind of a marketing guru, like I try, but I'm not like the best, So it's like the fact that I do as good as I do with what I put into my business is kind of wild. But anywho, so I think you have to like look into the value, because I've had influencers, like big name influencers, that I'm sure if I said their name, people would know just right off the bat, want to work with us, but they want 6 grand just to show up. Or like I've had people even say, like, I was like, oh, share stories during your stay, one post, one reel. And they were so offended because they thought they should get paid the equivalent of a down payment on a house to show up. And I was like, no. So I'm never making that money back. And there's only, like you've said before, there's only so many days in a year, and I'm already booking most of those days. So you really don't
Right.
provide me with a ton of value in that case. So I like to work with photographers a lot of the time because that's great value, right? They give you good photos. You can use them for your own marketing. You can use them on your social media. Like, they are quality. They're not like grainy iPhone quality where you're
Right.
like, okay, well, which, like, honestly, grainy iPhone quality is fine if they have really powerful marketing. If they bring you good guests with their iPhone photos, sweet,
Right.
But I've found that I feel I get more value out of working with like influencers when it's photographers that have quality product to provide you, because a lot
Yep.
of the times the influencer product is very variable, and they don't always have control over that. So
Yeah, I
um
totally agree. We've pretty much only worked with photographers that
yeah,
we
I
paid
love
for. But similar to you, Cozy Rock is always booked. So it's like the cost for a photographer there is more because it's
yeah.
giving up a stay that I know that I could book.
Mhm.
Whereas our cabin in Boone, often weekdays are not booked during certain
Yeah,
times of the year.
yeah.
So it'd be really easy for me to arrange a trade, or even I'm willing to pay more because I don't feel like I'm losing money on that stay. But if I'm paying for the photos and losing money on that stay, that's fine. I just need to know that the output is going to match
Yeah.
that cost. It's not just $2,000 for the images. It's also $1,000 for the 2 night stay. So now
Yeah.
we're looking at 3 grand. So I just want 3 grand worth of content, whatever they price their content at. That's fine. It just all needs to be
Yeah.
agreed upon.
It's funny too, because a lot of the time I feel like there's like this culture with influencers where they're like, "Oh, I'm providing you all this value and you're not giving me anything. Like you're not paying me anything." It's like, "Well, I'm paying you the equivalent of my stay." So I've had people be like, "Oh, well, it's not valued at that." And I'm like, "Do you realize how much you would have to pay to stay?" Like they equate, you know? So
It's tricky though because
yeah.
I've done a couple photo trades,
Yeah.
and what I learned from that was how much I was not able to relax during that stay. I was
Mm,
constantly, so I was on working. So it wasn't, so it is so real as a host. I see this. It's so real that I am giving up that money, so I am paying that.
yeah.
But I can also see how they might be like, "Yes, but I'm not enjoying it at that price point. If I'm
Yeah.
paying that price point to stay somewhere, I'm on vacation."
Yeah.
And that's not what I'm getting. I'm
Right.
not on vacation.
Right.
So therefore that price isn't actually valuable to me. And I totally hear that too. This is where it gets so tricky.
It's very tricky, and I'm not opposed to paying on top of free stays for sure, but within reason, because I think a lot of people are unreasonable. They're like, "Oh, I want you to give me a free stay, pay me X amount, and then I'll maybe deliver these." Probably doesn't
Yeah.
end up delivering them, and I've even had people pitch me like, "Oh, I want a percent on each booking I bring you," and I'm like, "No, because I'm gonna bring you
What?
those bookings anyway, because I get those myself, so it doesn't make
Right.
sense." And I'll be really straight with people. I'm like, and I've definitely offended people. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. Why would I do that from a business perspective? Because I book my days anyway. Why would I give you 10% for this? And,
I've never heard that asked
yeah,
before.
more influencers are kind of switching that way. They want like a percent on bookings and like stuff they bring in, which that business model really doesn't work for me. Maybe it would work for somebody who has like a listing that's not booking it at 100% occupancy. But also, what you have to think about is weekends are high demand, right? You probably know you're going to book weekends. Well, the influencer is probably going to for sure market to people that want to book weekends.
That's right. That was my first thought.
Yeah,
How do I tell? Like, I'm not going to give you credit for a weekend booking that would have booked otherwise, but a weekday one, I'm not opposed to that idea. I kind
yeah,
of like
yeah,
it incentivizes you to like get more people to book. I'm in
yeah.
favor of that. But yeah, to
Mhm.
your point, at Cozy Rock, it wouldn't make sense because we're already booking. At the other
Yes.
two, it would make sense. I'd be open to it, but not necessarily for weekends,
Yeah.
which are probably
Yes.
going to book anyway.
Yeah, it's a hard balance to strike, and it's like you want everyone to be happy with the agreement and whatever not like. But yeah, at the end of the day, I value working with photographers and videographers more than I do like influencers, just because I think that the influencers that probably truly provide good marketing value now want easily the equivalent of a month's income or maybe a percent on bookings, and it's just like it's not, there's no rationale to that for me because my business is relatively thriving on its
Right.
own without that.
Right.
So maybe you find value in doing it here and there and give it a whack, but for me, I couldn't justify it. I wanted to, but I was like, I can't, it doesn't make sense.
It's purely economics. I always think about it that way. If you
There you
can
go.
get away with charging that and people are paying that,
Yeah.
then you have figured out something that's working for you. More power to you.
Yeah.
It does not work for my economic
Yeah.
model for these reasons. So I can't make it work, but I don't blame you for asking for that. I've also learned since we've started creating content for some brands how much people pay
Yeah.
influencers to create content for them, and it's insane. So then that does give me some perspective if they're getting that kind of pay
Yeah.
for other brand work they're doing.
Yeah.
But again, all that means for them is economically, this doesn't make sense for me. I might
Exactly.
not do cabins because
And
it
they need
can't
to
work for
realize
the
who they're
host.
marketing to, right? Too. So like if an influencer is trying to work with small businesses like us, like we're not gonna pay the rate of a hotel or some like other large
Right.
corporation, and booking stays is very different than selling something that they can ship to their door. Like it's a lot harder to
Yeah.
like actually bring income in from that and stuff like that. So I think it's just a hard balance to strike. And I'm like, I'm no marketing expert. I just honestly trial and error the crap out of it. and so
Yes.
and
Yeah, I agree.
so, but I value photographers a lot. They give me like a tangible thing to use. And sometimes they also like market to people who are interested in what you have, probably more for the visual and for the love of cabins than for
Yeah.
stays. But yeah, so yeah, I would say,
Any particular ones you want to shout out?
yeah, Caleb. Wait, let me pull up his,
Is it G. Caleb Jones?
yes,
Girl, I was literally messaging him with
do
this
it,
morning
do it,
about
do it.
and shoot our because he lives in Atlanta. How did you get him all the way out west? Did
Um,
he come out?
Okay, he was out here for a road trip already. There's just this pesky flies flying around here. And the Tahoe. Yeah. So wait, hold on. I don't want to. I
He is
just not.
literally the like we have been messaging all morning, and it is so funny that you said his name. And I've been on the fence because it's for my cabin in Boone where we just don't make that much money
Yeah.
and it's not inexpensive. So I'm like,
Yes.
but now, okay, that's so
Yeah.
easy. I'm just gonna
Yeah.
message him right
So
now and be like,
he
let's do it.
yeah, so he'd worked with I wanted to say her handle right. This is why I pulled it up.
Okay.
Tahoe Little Black Cabins.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and Hannon. And she has so many amazing properties. And so she'd worked with him, I think, on the East Coast because she has properties over there. And he was over here, and I think she suggested my property to him. So then he asked to stay, which I feel like was a big blessing because I'm like like I'm such a small little property compared to what he's worked with. I'm like, I feel so humbled that you want to work with me. But yeah, so he and his wife, they took beautiful photos, and I feel like he's like an up and coming like Levi Kelly or
Yeah.
uh Dirt and Glass. Is it Dirt and
Yeah.
Glass? I love
Yeah,
that.
they're
I
heavy
love
East
them.
Coast. They've been going out west more, but this is one of the reasons I wanted your recommendations because I know all the East Coast photographers.
Yeah.
Do you have any other West Coast specific ones for our listeners on the West Coast?
I mean, I've worked with the local to us here, Ballesteros Photography. They're not like a niche for cabins or short-term rentals, but he's done amazing for our property. I can't say that we don't have a lot of those like cabiny influencers that you guys have on the East Coast. Yeah, I'm yet to discover someone who's like really niche for that, like here
Yeah.
that like yeah. There's some in like the Pacific Northwest, but I can't
So any
recommend.
photographers listening, there's an opening
Bring it
in
in.
the West Coast market, apparently.
Yeah.
Okay, which leads me to my last question,
Yeah.
which is, and I'm so curious because we don't talk to enough people on the West Coast. So cabin cultures, I do think a little bit different on the West
Yeah.
Coast and the East Coast.
Yeah.
What makes a cabin, and how do you see those differences in cabin culture between the coasts? If you were to describe like cabin culture on the West Coast.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the cabin culture is honestly like comparable across coasts. It's kind of like a unifying thing, you know. But I feel like what cabin, it's like what I described in the beginning when you were asking me about like my family's cabin. It's like quaint pitched walls and quirky, you know, like the floors make noise when you walk on them, and it's like cold until you get the fire going, and like that kind of thing is like what I like. You know, pine. I feel like there has to be pine. I don't know. Like a
Mhm.
cabin without pine is just like it's less cabiny, but
Agreed.
yeah. So I feel like those things are what I associate with like cabins and cabin culture and stuff. But yeah,
Is the Boho A-frame a cabin?
I think so. Yeah, we've got the quirky pitches. It's got some squeaks on the loft floor sometimes. Like it's from the 50s. Like it's quaint. It's got
Yeah.
characters.
You
So
totally brought it back to life.
yeah, we really did. Oh my
Just
god.
because it looks nice doesn't mean it's not a cabin, and I
Yeah.
love that because I do believe a lot. Obviously, I built one of mine, but in taking these abandoned ones and bringing life back into them and continuing the story that was
Yeah.
started by other people at a
Yeah.
different time with a different demand. So you making it
100%.
nicer is just adjusting it for the time we're in now and the use
Yeah.
case for your guests.
100%.
I love it. Candice, this was so fun. I feel
Yeah.
like we just like went through such a list of so many hosting things. We always touch on a couple, but
Yeah.
this was really fun to just like go all in on hosting with
Yeah.
another
Are we
host.
gonna end up being like the longest podcast yet? That's like 2
It-
hours of
It's
talking.
going to be two. I'm going to cut it into part 1 and part 2.
Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I'm a chatty individual.
But I also just think having another host with, 4 or 5 years under their belt, you really just see and experience a lot. And some of your
Yeah.
experiences are quite different from mine. So it's really fun, I think, to have like just another like data set of what
Yeah.
you've learned from hosting and how
Yeah.
that has improved your systems and your amenities and everything that you offer your guests.
Yep. There's something different to learn from everybody for sure.
What a treat.
Yes.
Thanks so much for joining us. And if you liked what you heard, feel free to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or share some of your favorite parts over on Apple Podcast. If you have feedback or suggestions for the future, you can also find me on Instagram at Cozy Rock Cabin. Looking forward to next week.